Matt, do you know what time it is?
Chimaev time?
It's Khamzat Chimaev time. And Matt, Khamzat Chimaev is in the first of his 2 bookings coming up, and he's set to take on Gerald Meerschaert this weekend at 185 pounds. Matt, this fight's interesting for a whole bunch of different reasons, not to mention the fight that's booked against Demian Maia next in a different weight class. And Khamzat Chimaev in his last time out, well, I mean, we can go back even further. First time out, John Phillips, 185. Absolutely mops the floor. Next fight, 170 pounds, Rhys McKee. We gave McKee props. People got upset about that, but Rhys McKee's actually a decent prospect. Khamzat Chimaev's just that next level. Like Corey Anderson says, there's levels. There are levels, and Khamzat Chimaev is up there. Then they move him back up to 185. And there's a lot of reasons why it's interesting, because for Gerald Meerschaert, he's faced that good level of UFC competition at this weight class. Originally supposed to be taking on Ed Herman. Meerschaert withdrew the last time. He tested positive for COVID back in August. And then the fight that he had before all of that took place, he took on Bangkok Red Ian Heinisch and got finished pretty brutally. But before that, he finishes the wrestler in Darren win. I can continue down Gerald Meerschaert's career because he's 31-13. He's only 32 years old. And out of his 31 total wins, 23 of them by submission. This actually isn't an easy test for Khamzat Chimaev. A lot of people might try and tell you. You look over at the odds. Chimaev opened a -500 favorite. That line dropped down to -580. Now he's sitting at a -423 average according to Best Fight Odds and those sites that have odds on this one. Meerschaert opened +385, now at a +325. It is a closer fight than those odds will tell you. I don't worry so much about Chimaev having somewhat recently fought at 70, moving back up to 85. This guy's an enigma, and I really do. I love the fact that they are pushing this guy. I think it's actually great for the sport because win, lose, or draw, he's not going to take the Sean O'Malley route and cry poor, and he's just going to continue to go out there. I would think so. This guy's striking is great. His grappling's amazing. I love this fight for so many different reasons. What's your take here? Because I know you might actually have a bit of a spin zone.
So I think Khamzat Chimaev is a great fighter. I think he's going to go on to do great things in the sport. And what I think is kind of interesting is, and no, he won't be able to do this forever. Just keep on taking fights at 185, and then if he wins them, go down to 170 and do it the next week. But MMA is such a new sport that we talk about who the GOAT is. Every other event, it seems like, oh, they get a win, they're the greatest. Oh, they get a win, they're the greatest. Do I know how you become the greatest ever? Fight every 10 days at 2 different weight classes for the rest of eternity, and you're probably going to become the greatest ever. Because that seems to be what Chimaev might be able to do if he can keep up this dominance. But that's the issue. We're booking this guy week after week, month after month, and that's going to be concerning once he does start to fight the upper echelon guys, because if you fight a John Phillips, yeah, he's not going to damage you all that much unless he knocks you out. And if you fight a Rhys McKee, who, again, Rhys McKee is a good fighter, but he was very overwhelmed in that fight by a much more dominant grappler. And when you look at McKee, what's his weakness? Kind of the grappling department, especially the wrestling defense. So he fought 2 guys that stylistically match up with himself very well. Gerald Meerschaert is a huge 185er. He's physically very big. He's got good kicks, got good cardio, got a good chin. Decent wrestling defense, but he's really good at jiu-jitsu, so he doesn't really mind to be taken down. That's sort of one of the issues. And I think that might get him hurt in this fight because Chimaev is going to go for the takedown. It's just really a matter of when, not if with him. And I think, of course, he will be able to get it on Meerschaert. The issue is Meerschaert a good enough grappler to make him pay for taking him down constantly? Can he threaten off his back? And I don't just mean submissions. I mean, can he threaten sweeps? Can he throw elbows off his back? Really anything, just to kind of get some respect in the grappling department. Because this is really what I'm building this up to. Is Chimaev going to beat Meerschaert? Yes. My problem is they're going to feed him to Demian Maia next, and Demian Maia is going to choke him unconscious. That's a hot take, but I'm going to stick with it. Because think, Demian Maia choked out Ben Askren, who's an Olympian. Ben Askren's not as good at striking as Chimaev.
On one hip.
But not really. In that fight, he was good. No. This is like my problem with the NBA too. You can't be good for 5 playoff games and then have 2 bad ones and say you got hurt just because those 2 bad ones and then be good again afterwards. You can't just say, oh, you can't pick and choose when you want to make injuries. Not that he's making it up. He needed a hip replacement. But it's just, you can't pick and choose when you are and when you're not hurt. And I think Maia is a really bad matchup for Chimaev because it's going to be just down to the MacKenzie, Dern, Randa, Markos. You're a really good wrestler and you have good striking, but you're going to have to take me down at some point. And Demian Maia is so much better at grappling than pretty much everyone else in the UFC that you might think you're good and you might look dominant against other guys like a Gunnar Nelson did at one point, and then you fight Damian Maia and you figure out what it's like to fight a really, really, and I don't just mean a world-class grappler, I mean like GOAT-level grappler. It's different. So I think he's going to go out there. He's probably going to whoop Meerschaert, and that's a disrespectful way of putting it, but he's probably going to beat it, and he's probably going to overwhelm him, get him tired, and finish him late. I just don't think the UFC can give you Gerald Meerschaert and then make you fight Damian Maia next. No matter what stage of Maia's career that he's at, he's so much more of a dangerous fight than anyone else they've given Chimaev. So if you want to keep the hype train alive, don't do the Maia fight next. Give him a Niko Price. Give him just an exciting guy outside of the top 15 at welterweight who can actually start to give him a little bit of resistance, because we're going to see 2 fights where he faced no resistance whatsoever. There was no adversity. Another fight where stylistically, as long as he make Meerschaert tired, he should be able to win it. And then you're going to give him to arguably the greatest grappler we've ever seen in the UFC. I just think it's a weird path.
You bring up a really good point. I mean, with Gerald Meerschaert, you don't really have to worry about his takedown defense because his grappling speaks for itself. And he has 46% takedown defense so far in the UFC. It's kind of a nothing stat. His striking numbers are actually in the negative, 3.31 given to 3.58 taken. And not good striking defense, 51%. His accuracy, 42%. That's not terrible. He's got decent power, long and rangy, closes distance, brings it to the ground. You want a perfect example of a really good Gerald Meerschaert fight, the Oscar Piata fight that we talk about quite a bit. That was that Usman RDA card, wasn't it?
I believe so. I always go back to the Darren Wynn fight because I know Wynn really hasn't had the same level of success in the UFC that a lot of people thought he was going to. But Wynn's an amazing wrestler with pretty good boxing, and Meerschaert faced adversity. He got clipped a few times himself, but when it really came down to that fight was just kind of a grit fight. It was really 50-50. It was sort of an ugly fight. And then Meerschaert just started landing a lot of good shots. And really, when he opens up with his striking, he can be a little dangerous on the feet. His striking's slow, and that's what a smaller guy moving up to 185 can really take advantage of in Chimaev, because weight isn't as big of an issue moving up as a lot of people think in MMA. Like Chael Sonnen talks about this a lot, how boxers can have so many world titles and how you can move up in weight class fairly easily. Because in striking, if you're the smaller guy, it's not as much of a disadvantage. You might hit a little less hard, but you're a lot faster. So the trade-off kind of works almost in your benefit. In MMA, if you're bigger, it more comes down to you're going to be the better and the heavier guy on top and in the grappling. So it's not that Meerschaert can't take advantage of his size and his power. I just don't really see the windows of opportunity. He'll really be able to use them to take advantage of anything Chimaev leaves open. And
if we look over on Tapology, to 788 votes, 86% going Chimaev, 65% have him by knockout, 18% by submission. If you look over for Meerschaert, the 14% depict him, 53% say his method of victory, most likely going to be by submission. We kind of talked about the odds there earlier, but Chimaev, one of the biggest favorites on this card. I threw it out there over on the Fight Night Picks YouTube community tab, and I said last weekend, plenty of underdogs came through in impressive fashion. Who's your go-to this weekend? The biggest underdog right now, Eduardo Garagori. Not a lot going with him. 33% of the voters, there's 542 out there, so it's a decent little sample size. So 33% went Meerschaert, 40% went with somebody that we're going to talk about in the next 2 fights. So like you said, I'm going with Chimaev. I think that fight against Damian Maia could actually go in a couple of different ways. So you're going to have to stay tuned with Fight Night Picks. And I hate to say this, but maybe go with a sub. We'd appreciate it. But both of us going with Khamzat Chimaev to get the win. It is Chimaev time. I'm really looking forward to this fight. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get into it.